Hello, everyone, and welcome to Paranormal Round Table. My name is Josh Turner. I'm your host. People call me Wolf, and my website is prtpodcast.com, and my email is joshturner@prtpodcast.com. We have a mailing address, too, which is 6001 West Palmer Lane, Suite 370, PMB 131, Austin, Texas, 78727. Palmer, spelled P-A-R-M-E-R. Okay, and that's Palmer Lane. For people who want to send us mail, which seems to be something people like to do. So we got a P.O. box for that. So if you want to send us anything in the mail, that's where you send it. Also, I'm joined by my part-time co-host tonight.
Hey, Anthony. Good evening, everyone.
And that's Anthony, not Tony. Tony is Mushu. Anthony is a completely different individual. They're always calling him Tony and thinking that they're the same person. They're not. Two different people.
Might as well.
But, well, they're both ugly. That's the thing they have in common.
Okay, but I'm less ugly.
That's debatable. But, so anyways, the show we have tonight, we're going to have a couple people come on, but before we do that, we're going to talk about the groups. We have Paranormal Round Table, Paranormal Encounters, Paranormal Lounge. Those are all different people. Tony has Paranormal Encounters, Nelly has Paranormal Lounge. Paranormal Round Table is pretty much everybody's. And now I have my own group. It's a Josh Turner fan page that was created by some fans and Phil Stern in Germany. I appreciate you doing that. And a lot of people still think that it's Josh Turner, the country singer. So I get people telling me all the time they love my music, and I have no idea that they could hear me singing in the shower. But I appreciate that. Amazing what they can do with the spyware nowadays. So that being said, we have all these different groups. We want you to join. Okay. Whisper to a Scream, Ryan Tremblay, he's affiliated with us. He has as a group, and he does a podcast. And I've been on I've done some episodes for him with his show. He works with us. He does a lot of research for us. Don't forget, every month we have an art contest. It's the Willie Williams Art Contest. It's named after my friend Willie Williams, who passed away last May of brain cancer. And he was an artist. And so we have that going, and then we also have what else do we need to talk about?
Let's see. We got the email, website, groups,
the Patreon.
Yeah. We have a Patreon. Just go to patreon.com/PRT podcast if you want to become a patron. There's three different. There's I believe a $2, $3, $5, and $10 tier. So
yeah, it helps support the show and keep us going. So that we don't have to actually dump our own money into this, and we can actually afford to take time off from work. We have a company, and we're very busy, so we have to take time off to do the show. And as always, we welcome anyone that wants to give us their stories. You can get a hold of me through Facebook Messenger, or you can send it through my email. If you're going to send me a friend request, please let me know that you're a fan of the show, because otherwise your friend request is going to sit there, and eventually I'm just going to kick it out. So I have no room for if you're not a fan of the show and you just want to promote something of yours and this and that, that's all good, but I just don't have room for it. I don't have time for it. And I try to keep my friends list tight. And so I keep it to people that I know in my day-to-day life, and to those that I know from the show that are fans. I don't have time for much else, and so it's nothing personal, And all these people that I had kicked off my Facebook, and they asked me why, and I was just like, I don't know you, and you don't participate in the show or the groups or anything, and I just don't have time to make new friends. It's nothing personal, and I promise you it's nothing personal. I just don't have time for it. And also, I would like everyone to remember that we always give away an autographed book every episode. It could be from a number of authors, from Linda Godfrey to Ken Gerhard. And we send that off, and we give you some swag, PRT swag. If you're from out of state, from out of Texas, we'll give you some Texas swag, because we live in a very cool state, and at least I think we do. And so we do that every week. And so what you'll do is you'll send your comment for the show. You'll put it in the when we post it in the Paranormal Roundtable group on Facebook. Okay, we'll drop the official link. You can post your comment on the show for this particular show and any other particular show, and we'll pick at random. And I don't actually do the picking, but my people will pick at random someone's comment, and they will be the winner, and they will receive a book in the mail. So that being said, is that all? Is that everything? We got everything out of the way?
Yep, that's everything.
That's good. It's the prelims. We got to get all that stuff said and done. And I want to introduce my two guests. The first guest I'm going to introduce is Karla, and the second guest is Lisa. And they're going to interview together. They are sisters. Y'all want to say hello?
Hello, everyone.
Karla and Lisa, you're both originally Washingtonians, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that how you say it? Washingtonians or Washingtonians?
Washington.
Washingtonians. So you guys are from Washington, but now Lisa you live in St. Louis, right?
I'm in St. Louis, Missouri now, yes.
Yeah, and Karla still lives up there in the beautiful state of Washington.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, very, very beautiful place. And so I have to ask, the first question I have to ask, Karla, you were the older sister? And
yes.
Yes, okay. And it's a weird situation. Like, you guys, do y'all want to explain? One of y'all want to explain y'all's situation, like how you, as far as like how, like. Excuse me.
Lisa can do it. She's the one who found me.
Okay. All right.
Okay. All right. When I was born, our dad, we share the same dad. Our dad was in a hunting accident, and my mother ended up giving me up for adoption. And so all my life I have wondered, about my family. And when I was 32 years old, no, not 32, when I was 23 years old, I did a search and I found my birth family. I found my sister Karla and several other siblings that I have.
Several other siblings? Like, how many other siblings?
Well, it's me and Karla have the same dad.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a brother Denver and a brother Scott from my mom's side, and then I have my adopted brother Rick through adoption.
So you have a pretty rich family tree. It sounds like you have a lot of siblings.
Yeah,
and they're half and whatever. So that's kind of like my situation in a way. I got like my half brother, and then I got my sister, and then I got my first cousin who I consider my sister because she grew up with us, and so she just is my sister to me. So it's kind of weird, but yeah. So you guys, you met each other, and how old were you, Lisa, when you met up with Karla?
23.
23, and okay, and so, so you guys, you had lived a good part of your life by the time you had met her.
Right.
And how far off did y'all live from one another?
She lived in Forks, Washington. No, actually, I think she was in Port Angeles. You were in Port Angeles at the time, weren't you?
Yeah. Halfway between Split and Port Angeles, actually.
How far away did y'all live from each other?
It's about 150 miles.
Yeah, that's not very far, really, to be related and not know each other.
Right.
And that's crazy. And now that you guys, and so I guess what's interesting about it is you guys grew up separately, okay, for 23 years. And but you guys have both had paranormal experiences. Now, Karla, Lisa, had experiences since you were a child.
Right.
And then Karla, yours began later on, which is very interesting about yours. You want to start? I'll start with you, Lisa, because yours were when you were younger. We can. You want to talk about what happened to you as a child, because it leads into everything else.
Well, it started out when I was a child. I used to have this fascination with this name Sherry, and I always spelled it Sharrai, which is a really weird spelling. I had a cow that I named that, and I also had a cat that I had named that Sherry. when I grew up and I found my birth family, I found out that that was my mother's name, and that's how her name was spelled. So that's how I really started figuring out my abilities. I mean, I've always had abilities, but I never really was conscious of them. Oh gosh.
So like, so I'll help you out here. What you're trying to say is you've always had you're empathic. You've always been, yes, and that's what it sounds like. You're empathic, and you've always had sort of a, what would you call it? Clairvoyance.
I'm also clairvoyant.
Clairvoyant, yeah. And so you've always had these abilities, but you didn't know what they were, and you didn't know that you didn't know you had them. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I didn't know I had them. You know, it's like I always had this vision in my head, and I saw a lady laying in a bed with dark hair, and this is my very first memory. Okay, and anyhow, this lady was laying in this bed, and she had dark hair, and she had a child in her arms, and she was handing that child over to another woman who had lighter colored hair. It was a caramel color hair. And come to find out, that lady in the bed was my mother. I was the child. And the lady receiving the child was Karla's mom.
And so...
And that's because... Should I explain that a little?
Yeah, please.
Well, my mother was over to see someone who had Lisa, I think before she was adopted. And the lady said, "Do you want to see Marvin's daughter, which is Lisa?" She goes, "Sure, I want to see her." So that's how that came about.
Oh, wow. And so you guys had, and like you said, you have the same dad.
Yes.
Yeah, same dad. And you guys met, okay. And what year was it that you guys met?
Gosh, see,
you're making us do math here.
Yeah, because see, it's super important, and if you don't know that date, then the interview's going to end right now. I'm just kidding, ladies.
I would say
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. I'm just messing with you.
I would say about 1988 or 1989.
Well, don't just start making up stuff, all right? Let's just, just stop with the lies, Lisa. Jeez. Okay, you don't have to just throw numbers out there. I think it was during the year of Perestroika. I'm not sure. No, I'm just kidding.
I was 23.
23. Okay.
I was born in 1965, so you were 23 years old.
You were hanging out, listening to Cyndi Lauper and George Michael and having a good time? No?
No. Van Halen.
George Strait. Oh, okay, Van Halen. Well, all right. You're a little hardcore.
Motley Crue,
Motley Crue.
Those guys.
You know what? Motley Crue out on Netflix, they have I wish it was longer. I wish it would have been longer because it was only about an hour and 40 minutes. And I thought, no way they could do justice in an hour and 40 minutes, but it's all about Motley Crue, and it's called The Dirt. It's a pretty good film. I watched it with my wife the other night on Netflix, and I was one of my only friends that was not a big Motley Crue fan. Like, I liked one song, I think it's Gone Away, I think, or whatever. It's Home Sweet Home or something like that. That's the only one.
Home Sweet Home.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now,
actually, I went to their farewell tour.
Yeah.
And me and a friend, we ended up getting Tommy's drumsticks.
Oh my gosh!
So I have one of Tommy's drumsticks, and then I gave it to my daughter Cheyenne. So,
man, those guys partied like hardcore. It was crazy because like I saw Vince Neil on Celebrity Ghost Stories. And it was a very touching episode where he talked about his daughter, and it actually made me tear up. I was like, oh, my gosh. But that was one of the things that was instrumental in bringing them back together was like right after that happened, they kind of rallied around him and said, okay, we want this guy back as our lead singer, and then blah, 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 blah. And it's really sad what happened to his daughter, to lose a child like that. But so going forward, all right, so you had these experiences as a child. Anything else you want to talk about as when you were a kid, paranormal?
Well, a lot of the activity, I didn't, not as a teenager so much, but when I was an adult is when it really started happening hard for me. I was living in a house, and I had awoke one morning, and I was getting ready to go to work, and I had looked in the mirror, and I had a bite mark on my arm. And so I called my daughter in, and I said, "What does this look like?"
Hold on. You said you had a bite mark, it was a human or spider? What?
It was a human bite mark on my arm.
Oh my gosh. Okay. All right. So let me back up here. How old were you?
Oh gosh.
In your 20s, 30s? I mean, like, or were you you had a daughter already.
It was, actually, I can tell you the date because I have it written down. I kept a log of, some of the things that happened.
And this was in a particular house?
Yes.
Okay.
It was in my house, in Tenino, Washington.
Oh, okay. Tenino.
It happened. Yeah, it happened October 23rd, 2009 is the day that I got bit.
And okay, now, so this is south of Seattle. Is it southwest of Seattle? Yes. Okay. All right. Yeah, I've been up there. We were talking about that. And I've been up to Washington several times. But
right.
Okay, so you were living in a house, and your daughter. How old was your daughter?
Let's see. That was
she like a teenager? Was she a child or?
She was a teenager.
Okay, she was a teenager. Okay, so it was just you and her?
I have two daughters.
Two daughters, and that one's older, younger?
This was the younger one.
Okay, so you had two teenage daughters, or you had one that was a teenager and one was about to be a teenager, something like
that. The one had just become a teenager, and the other one is 7 years older than.
Okay. The reason I'm asking that is because a lot of times when there's activity, poltergeist activity in particular, female teenagers, but it can be teenage males too, but typically teenage females, it's and there's a lot of theories behind it. They say it could be something that's like they have kinetic ability, or they put off a type of energy that attracts a demonic spirit, but there's all kinds of theories about it and why it is that way. But when there's activity that's that powerful that it can bite you, it's interesting that you had two young girls there because that a lot of times that is. I have a friend who has two teenage girls. One's now out of the house, and the other one still lives with her, but. She had some stuff go on, and she's seen spirits and all kinds of stuff in her house. Of course, she found out later that one of the kids was playing with a Ouija board on a regular basis, but it didn't surprise me that her kids had a lot of emotional issues and things like that, and so she was telling us about it, and I was going like, well, that's kind of par for the course, but. So you had your children, as far as you know, though, they weren't like playing with any Ouija boards or doing anything like that?
No.
And you think it was based on the house?
I think it was based on the property. From what I was told, the property that I lived on was Native American land at one time. One of my daughters also has abilities like me. The other one claims that she does not. So I don't fight with her over that, but I know that it runs in the family.
Sounds like you don't
obviously.
believe her, though. You're like, yeah, you have abilities. Stop acting. Run through that wall. I already told you once. And you just keep failing.
I think that she does, but I think that she's in heavy denial over it.
And when you say abilities, you don't mean like she can go and start like a fire with her, you know, or thoughts or anything like that. Nothing extreme. It's just clairvoyant.
No.
Okay.
One of my daughters is clairvoyant, and she is an empath, and
she knows she is.
She knows she is.
Okay, and the other one is in denial.
And I've actually seen that one daughter levitate.
Oh wow! And what was she conscious when this happened, or was she like asleep, or?
She was conscious. She was on her bed, and she just levitated a little bit, was hovered for a second, and then went down.
And I'll tell you something, those at home going like, I don't believe this happened. Like, let me tell you something. That is not an uncommon thing. I had an aunt who had a friend, and Anthony, you know this, Rosa. She, you know, one of her friends who was a curandera, you know, and in Spanish, I mean, like a how would you call that? Like a healer, and like a medicine woman, you know, and she would do that. And I personally witnessed someone detaching something from my brother's back, and I watched him come up off the ground about 2 or 3 inches, and it was the weirdest thing ever. I'm not kidding. No, I saw it with my own eyes, and there were 3 other people in the room that saw it. One of which I mentioned earlier is actually deceased now, but like it was me, him, my brother, and Scorpion, and another friend of ours, Squid. And we were all there when it happened. And this guy, David, was it's weird. He was a Christian by religion, but philosophically a Buddhist. It's weird because Buddhism is actually not really a religion. It's actually a philosophy, depending upon which type of Buddhism. And anyways, he considered himself a shaman or a monk, whatever, and he helped to detach something from my brother who used to be a Satanist. And I saw him come up off of the ground. And I was with four other people that we all witnessed this. This was not some BS, and it was pretty crazy when it happened. And then the door slammed, and it was like something had left. And it was weird. And then he started a new chapter in his life and gave his life over to Christ, and he hasn't looked back. So, yeah, it is something that does happen. So before people poo-poo and say, oh, I don't believe this person, that doesn't happen, it does absolutely happen, you know.
So when you witnessed this happening to your daughter, was this something that she was trying to do or something that just kind of happened?
It was something that just kind of happened. She was standing there on her bed, and you know, we were talking, and next thing you know is she just rose up a few inches and just kind of hovered for a second and then went back down.
Did this scare her?
Not as bad as the little girl that used to climb into bed with her.
Yeah. I honestly, what happened, Anthony, she was like, I told you I ain't doing my homework. Right after she levitated, and be honest, Lisa, you left the room. You were like, okay, I'm done. Don't do it.
My work is done here.
She's like, she walks out. You're the one that's going to suffer. You're not going to get a job after school. I'm just telling you. Algebra, you're flunking. Sorry. But yeah. So she levitated. And the little girl. Okay, now this is one story you did that you did tell me about, because we didn't get to talk about all this. But you did tell me about this one. Now, I wanted to get into that. You said you got bit, okay? Was it the same spirit that we're about to talk about? Was that what bit you?
I believe it was. We had a lot of stuff going on in my house at the time. We had some investigators come to my house and do investigations. And I have a lot of pictures that were taken. There was some audio at one time, but there was a lot of stuff. I have a whole notebook sitting over on the table, full of incidents that happened. But there was a little girl. My daughter did not want to sleep by herself in her room. She finally, when she was able to come and tell me. She told me that a little girl with red eyes used to climb in bed with her at night and lay there next to her.
Oh. Okay.
Well, that's just rude.
That's terrifying.
So,
Okay, so the little girl had red eyes. Did she give you any better description?
She just said that she was a little girl with red eyes.
Oof. Oh my gosh. Okay, and now this went on a regular basis. This is the one that also rose up off the ground.
Yes.
Okay. And eventually, like, this culminated in you guys moving eventually, right? You left?
Well, no, I stayed there in the house for years and years. I ended up moving because of my husband dying and fights that went on in the family and my Sasquatch experience.
The Sasquatch. See, folks, it does happen. Everybody's constantly asking me why I stay living in a haunted house for 10 years. First of all, the rent was really cheap. And second of all, it's gone a lot. So, but yeah, that it does happen. Everybody's always like, why didn't you move? Why didn't you move? Another thing about haunting is that typically it's not all the time. It comes in waves. Like there'll be like some stuff that'll happen, and then there'll be relative peace for months, and then stuff will happen in like spurts.
Exactly.
You know? Yeah, and then you kind of get it kind of not, things are fine for a while, and you think, oh, it's over. It's been 5-6 months since anything's happened. Then all of a sudden, a bunch of stuff will happen.
Yeah, in one of the investigations in my house, Mark, he's an investigator. Mark went into my daughter's room, and there wasn't a lot going on this night. So Mark sat in the corner. I think it was in the corner, but he ended up challenging the spirit. Well, he got a little more than what he bargained for, because he ended up getting scratched on the back. He came running out of the room, came out to Donnie, where Donnie and I were, and had Donnie pull up his back, and you could see scratches across his back. And we sat there and we watched him. We took pictures of it, and we watched him get darker and darker. We had all the lights off in the house, and Donnie was standing in front of one of these mirrors that I had in the house, and he took 2 pictures about 4 seconds apart. The first one shows just Donnie standing there, and the second one, you see a man standing behind Donnie with his head leaning over Donnie's shoulder.
These spirits that you encountered in this house, were they aggressive, angry? I mean, of course, a little girl with red eyes, that sounds very evil. And then you think that same spirit bit you?
Yeah, there was several spirits in our house. There was one, his name was Andrew. And the reason how we found this out is because they had a spirit box or something like that in my house. And it kept saying, that his name was Andrew. And it said that he was murdered, and something about the woods, and 3 people. And this box just kept saying it over and over and over again. The other spirit that was there, that one of my daughters had seen, was a man in a military uniform. I believe that one to be, we called him Jerry, because the man that we had bought the property from, his name was Jerry. And right after I bought the property from him, he passed away. And so I'm thinking the man, and he was a war veteran. And so I'm thinking the man in the military uniform had to have been Jerry coming back to his house. And then the one that bit me, I believe it was a demon. It was a demon. It was a demon that was crawling into bed with my daughter. Those are the three that I know of.
And now you said you had a Sasquatch encounter at that same property?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Now let me switch over to you for a minute, Karla. Let me ask you a question. You said that you had no spiritual encounters, nothing had happened to you until 2006. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a reason? Is that when you began to dabble in the occult and you began to play with Ouija boards?
No. No. I didn't. We talked for 3 hours and 39 minutes the other day. We stayed up really late. But I forgot to tell you the first thing that happened to me. And this all started, I think, because my mother passed away. And then my other half-sister on my mom's side passed away not too long after my mom. Anyway, the first thing that happened to me was 9 months after my mother passed away. And I was here at her house. She left it to me. And I was asleep. And all of a sudden, during my sleep, I don't think I was dreaming before. All of a sudden, everything was bright, brilliant, colored, bright lights. And they were all over the place. And they were all connected, but they were outlined in black. And I'm just going, whoa, what's this? That's what I'm thinking. And then all of a sudden, my mother showed up in the middle of all this. I didn't see her face. It was a shadowy bust. And my mom said to me, and I recognized her voice, she said, "Karla, this is your mother. I just want you to know I'm okay." And instead of answering her, in my head, I'm saying, well, this cannot be a dream because I have never dreamt like this before. And then she says to me, "Your dad is here too." And I said, "He is?" My dad had passed away quite a while before that. And then my father showed up in a shadowy bus also. And he spoke to me. He greeted me. And I can't remember how the greeting was. And then he went on to talk to me. But I was so freaked out by this that I didn't hear anything but the greeting. And then I was awake. And I don't know. Then I was skeptical. I thought, could this be a dream? It sure wasn't like a dream. A week later, I heard on Coast to Coast AM because I was here working on the house and I didn't have any TV here, so I would listen to the radio. And Coast to Coast AM, I would start listening to that every night while I was fixing up the house. And the exact same story came from one of their listeners. And it was pretty much exactly what I went through. And so then I went, wow, that was not a dream. That was a visit from my mom and my dad. And then things went on from there with ghostly stuff going on. And there was a lot of it.
And do you care to expound on that?
Oh, yeah. I tried to put this in order. I've got some notes here to remind me. And after that, I think the first thing that happened, we were living in the house by then, and it was my husband and I's anniversary. I was sick in bed, and he came home with a long-stemmed rose. And I said, "Thank you. Can you put that in a vase for me?" So he went and got the vase, and it was dirty. It was stored outside. And so we went to clean it up. He put the rose on top of a pan that was on the stove and just rested it there with the bud facing the stove. And he went to clean up the vase. And when he turned around to put the rose in it, it had gone off the pan and was turned the opposite direction. And so that was the first experience of something happening. And he came in and reluctantly told me about it because he's he was very skeptical, And let me see. Do you want me to just go on?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Okay. Then my husband promised to fix up the house as far as the flooring. There was carpet in here, and it was awful. And he was dragging his feet. So I just started ripping up the carpet. And there was a divider, kind of a half wall. I tore that out. I said, when are we going to do this? This is awful. And there was a plaque that I had given my mom. And it was right in between us as we were talking about when are we going to do this. And the plaque fell on the floor. And the plaque said, believe, and it had an angel on it. Your dreams will come true. Something of, I don't know if that's exactly right, but that's what it meant. And I didn't think about it at the time. But when I looked back on it, after other things started happening a lot, I remembered that I didn't go where that plaque was to pick it up. It hadn't fallen off the wall, and I had to walk about 6 or 8 feet to pick it up. It was projected off the wall. And I didn't really think about it at the time, but when I looked back, I went, wow, that was my mom. And let me see, I'm looking at my notes. Oh, yes, I'd been being touched and stuff. It wasn't scary to me. It was more comforting because I just thought it was my mom, saying I'm here. And there was probably other stuff happening, but I can't remember. But I kept it to myself. I didn't say anything to anybody. And then one day
I'm sorry, go
ahead. Like I said, I just kept it myself. And one day, after it had been going on for, I don't know, at least a couple months, my husband crawls in bed and he goes, Karla, I want to know what's going on. And I went, what are you talking about? He just kept saying that. I want to know what's going on. And I didn't really know what he was talking about. So I said, well, tell me what you're talking about. He goes, paranormal stuff. I got all excited and I said, what happened to you? What happened to you? And all that he said is he got tripped 2 or 3 times. And I said, come on, there's more. You had more than that. But he wouldn't tell me. I don't know if there was any more than that. So when he told me that he had experienced that, I was picking up the kids from someplace where they're at in the middle of the day. And as they got into the car, I said, kids, guess what? Our house is haunted. And, yeah, right, Mom. What are you talking about? So we came to the house, and it was just moments later from me telling them this, just a few minutes. And I just laid on the bed to watch TV in the bedroom, and I was eating a chocolate bar. And my youngest son comes in the bedroom, and he goes, give me some. I said, no, you got your own. Leave me alone. And he's mischievous, and we joke around and stuff, and we were being playful, and he was coming after the chocolate bar, and he was tripped at the foot of the bed, and he got up. I mean, he went down hard. He gets up, and his eyes are great big, and he goes, something just tripped me. There's nothing there to trip me. And I tripped. Something was there. And I said, I told you so. And I laughed. And then it was kind of loud. We were making a ruckus, and so my older son comes to the door to see what was going on. And told him that Duncan had just been tripped, and I just told him that the house was haunted. So he's standing there and watches Duncan try again on the other side of the bed. He walked that way, and he went down again for the second time, and my older son saw it happen.
Did they say what did he say what it felt like was tripping him?
I never heard him explain. He just kept saying something was there, something was there. And so both of my sons experienced that. And let me see, my older son, he was touched a couple of times, both in his hair and his leg. And the younger son, all I remember him experiencing is the tripping. But
Hey, tell them about the orbs.
oh yeah, but that was much later in a different house. That was different spirits.
So you guys lived in two different haunted houses, or there were houses that were haunted, and you, Lisa, lived in one house that was haunted, or two?
I lived in one house that was haunted, yes.
Yeah. And so all this stuff that was going on, let's go back to you, Lisa. You had all this stuff going on in that house, and then you said you had a Sasquatch experience. Do you think that tied into the haunting, or what do you think that was?
I think it all ties in together. My Sasquatch it happened after I had left my property for a while and then moved back there. I was off the property for 3 years. One of my daughters and their family was living there. After my husband had died, one of my daughters and their family were living in my big house. And so I had asked my son-in-law to build me a tiny house out back. And we were still working on the house, but I was living in it. And my dog Loki and I were in the loft, which was my bedroom, and we were watching some TV. And Loki gets up on the pillow, and he's looking down, and he's barking at the door. And he kept barking and barking, and I kept shushing him away. And this happened like 4 or 5 times, I shush him away. Finally, we're laying there, and Loki's looking down, and all of a sudden, there's this great big bang on my door. And you have to have seen my door. My door is a very, very heavy solid wood door, heavy frame. It took 4 people to carry that door and to put that door in there. But my door was knocked open, and I was freaking out because I'm upstairs, I had no exit to go and get away. So I called my brother, Rick, who was now living in that house, the big house, because I had to evict one of my daughters from my house for circumstances. Anyhow, so my brother ended up living in my big house, and I was living in the tiny house. And Loki and I were upstairs, and we were...
Loki's the dog.
Loki was my dog.
Yeah,
yes,
Loki.
my little dog.
I got a friend named Loki. We call him Loki.
And Loki kept barking at the door. And after about 4 or 5 times, trying to shush Loki, I thought everything was cool. And Loki was just sitting there on the pillow, and he was looking down. And all of a sudden, there was a loud bang on the door. And my door, which was a very thick, solid wood door, it had a huge solid wood frame. It took 4 people to put that door in. It was that heavy. Anyhow, it was pushed in. And so I called my brother Rick, and I said, Rick, something just hit my door and knocked it in. I said, can you come out here? So he comes out, and we're looking around, and we can't find anything. But you can hear something rustling around in the trees just along the way. And okay, so he goes back into his house and I go back into my house, and that's it for that night. When we woke up in the morning, outside of my front door, about 5 feet away, was a huge pile of scat. It was not human scat. It wasn't bear scat. It looked like human, but the human doesn't, not like that.
So you think that that was, you think it was a Sasquatch?
I think it was a Sasquatch.
Had you had any Squatch activity going on in that area, or?
Well, where I live was a place called Tenino, Washington, and in between Tenino, Rainier, and Yelm, they're all within a short vicinity of each other. There has been numerous Sasquatch sightings. Also, my property had kind of butted up against Fort Lewis McCord property, where they do their maneuvers. And from what I've heard, and from a lot of people say, that in the southeast quadrant, which is the part that attached to where my property was, the military actually killed a Sasquatch there years back.
Do you know what year that was that they may have said that? You don't know what decade, or?
I think it was either 1979 or 1997. It seems like that it was one of those. I'm not exactly sure, but I've heard lots of people say that on Fort Lewis there's all this activity going on, and that there has been Sasquatch killed there. We go back. The next day, nothing happens in my tiny house. 2 nights after the first incident, it happened again. Loki and I were upstairs in our room, and he's barking at the door again. And there's another bang on the door. This time it pushes the door in, and it breaks the frame. And so I called my brother Rick and another friend who was staying on the property. Her name is Karla, so that's Karla number 2. And I had them come out. I told them, I said, something banged on my door again. And so they come out and they look, and, well, we're out looking through the woods trying to see if we can find something, and you can hear footsteps going away, but we never saw what it was. Anyhow, we ended up, the next day, obviously fixing my door. So I had a rooster, and his name was Joe. And Joe used to live on our porch. He stayed on our porch, and he was a pet. He would come in our house and sit on the counter, and he followed you around like a puppy dog. And it was about 3:00, in between 3 and 3:30 in the morning, and I heard Joe screaming at the just this death scream. And then all of a sudden there was nothing. And so I called Rick, and I said, Rick, something's going on. I said, I heard Joe screaming, and now I can't see him and I can't find him. And so Rick came out, and we looked around, and we couldn't find Joe. So we ended up, just going back in the house and going back to bed. And the next morning, Karla went out looking for Joe, and she ended up finding a kill spot. That night that had happened, we did see a raccoon out in the woods, but it didn't have Joe's body with him. So I really don't think it was the raccoon that got my rooster. And Sasquatch are known for stealing chickens.
Yep.
So my conclusion is that he took my chicken and ate him.
I think that's very plausible because I did a show not too long ago. As of the time that by the time this airs, it will have already been aired. But there was a town, and actually one of my uncles lived there for a long time, and they had Sasquatch activity. Not I guess probably 15 to 20 miles north of that city, and it was a lot of it. And it was attacking people's farms in that area, and it was targeting chickens, and they know it was a Sasquatch because it was seen by multiple people, and it also killed a calf too, and was like it just slung it over its shoulder and was like walking off with it, you know. So yeah, that's not uncommon. It's not an uncommon thing. Dogmen do the same thing. They'll kill your chickens. They'll kill your livestock. They're pretty ravenous when it comes to being livestock slaughterers. You know, I know there's a lot of people like to think that Bigfoot are benevolent and they're nice and they're kind, whatever, but they're not above killing.
Right.
You know, so
Well, I think that this Sasquatch was attracted to my house because it was brand new construction. And the fact that I left a light on in it at night, so I could see to go upstairs from downstairs, you know. I'm sure it was probably curious as to what was going on there. Needless to say, after this last incident happening with my rooster, I ended up moving into the big house.
So you were living in a haunted house, and it was all good until Sasquatch showed up, basically.
Well, I lived in the haunted house, and I lived in there for a long time. I owned that property for 25 years. But the last 3 years of it, I had actually moved out of the house and let my daughter live in that house.
And they built you a smaller house in the back.
And they built me a smaller house. I had moved up to Federal Way, Washington, which is really close to Seattle, to live with my new husband. Well, he died a year and 9 days after our wedding. He ended up with cancer. And so I had to move home, and that's why we ended up building the tiny house in the backyard. So they could stay in the big house because I didn't need that big house all to myself, you know. Yeah. I'm just one person and a tiny dog. So we decided to build me a tiny house that would solve everybody's problems. They had a place to stay. They didn't have to pay rent, you know, and I had my little tiny house.
The tiny house wasn't haunted or anything, right? Nothing going on there?
No.
Okay. So Sasquatch, so that is your experiences with the spirits and with Sasquatch, right?
Well,
did we leave anything out?
Oh, there's lots and lots and lots to do with the spirits. I mean, you can see we had ghosts. You could see apparitions going down the hallways and going through walls. One of the spirits in the house really liked to play with my keys. I had this little hook by the door that whenever I would come in the house, I'd hang my keys up on this hook, you know, so I always knew where they were. When I go to get them to leave to go to work or, you know, whatever I had to do, my keys would be gone. And I would have to search the house to find my keys. A lot of times I would find them in the couch, or they would hide it in a coat pocket, just weird places. I found them in a cookie jar one time.
And these apparitions that you saw in your house, what can you give us a description? What do they look like?
Well, I told you about the guy in uniform.
And the uniform and the little girl with the red eyes. But I mean,
with the red eyes.
Was it, because I'm wondering, was it like a portal? Was there something there that was there were multiple spirits? Because I believe that's what was happening in our place, was that there was multiple.
I was told that there was a vortex created in my closet because I had two mirrors that were facing each other.
Okay.
And one of my investigators said, "Well, that's a good way." I said, they said you can create a vortex by doing that, and that's probably what's bringing these spirits into this house. And so we ended up moving one of the mirrors, which is the mirror that Donnie had actually saw the man in the mirror.
That's actually the best. Folks at home, listening at home, I'm going to give you the best way to get rid of these spirits. If you're having problems and you have the mirror situation like she's got, you go and you take fresh chicken blood and you throw it all over the mirrors. You do an incantation in Latin, basically summoning, I don't know what it is. But anyway, you just read those words, and then you smash the mirrors while cursing with a hammer. Okay? And that will fix the problem. And
Looks like a charm.
Totally made that up. I'm totally messing with you. Please do not do that. Folks, I'm joking. I'm totally joking. Just seeing if everybody's awake. I'm messing with you, okay? That's not correct, all right? Don't go and do that and say that Josh Turner told you to do that, okay? All right.
No, the investigators told me just to separate the mirrors, to move them so they weren't facing each other.
Yeah, because mirrors have okay, I'm going to say something about mirrors, all joking aside. When I moved into the place that I was in, there was a mirror in the hallway, and it was obviously very old. And it had been there for a long time, and it was bolted into the wall. And so, in order to take it out, it would have tore all that, it would have tore everything up. So we just left it there. I left it alone. But I was told by a clairvoyant, a psychic, I had all these different people, a shaman, two ghost hunting crews that came, one from San Antonio. And they were just like, you need to do something about this mirror. This is where the problems are. And so I'm like, well, what do I do? And they were like, well, you can cover it up. So I actually tried. I had a sheet over it for a little while. People would walk in the house and then go into the hallway. And why is this sheet here? And this female friend of mine decided to just yank it off. And literally that night, a bunch of weird stuff started happening. So then I was told by this other psychic, well, she wasn't really a psychic. She was like I guess you would call her a bruja. She played with tarot cards and did all that kind of stuff, and I didn't ask her permission. What do you call it? Her opinion. We were hanging out, and she was like, yeah, I do readings, and I do this, and I do that. And she's like, you have a house that's got some activity. So she knew her stuff. Nobody told her that. I never met her before. And I was like, yeah, so. And she's like, yeah, well, you have a mirror there, and it's created a portal, like a vortex. And I'm like, yeah, I can believe that. And then there's a lot of weird stuff's happened there. And she's like, well, when you cover it up, you can keep spirits trapped, like they can be trapped outside of their little exit or whatever. So I said, okay. And she's like, but and then you can also make it angry because when they're able to come back, they're PO'd, they're mad, whatever. And they'll make their presence known. And she said that there were good and bad spirits going through that portal. And so she just told me that, and I was like, and who are you exactly? And she told me, and I was like, okay. And she was just like, I thought I'd give you that advice. And she wanted to do a reading on me, and I was like, no, thank you. So yeah, but that I thought that was interesting because a friend of a friend, basically a female friend, I guess I should say, one of my buddies, a girl he was dating, she just came over and just yanked the sheet right off of the mirror. And I was like, why did you do that? She's like, I don't know. I just felt compelled to do it. I was like, yeah, I'm sure something did compel you to do it. And you did it. And then sure enough, a bunch of stuff started happening. So I can believe the mirror thing, Yeah. And I mean, it's creepy because there was a place we used to work at. I can't say the name of it. It's a retirement home. It's a very nice, it was a very peaceful place. Working there at night, and the residents were retirees, and they were all very nice people, and the people that worked there were very nice, and we had the account for several months, and I know that a bunch of different guards that we had work there, and they enjoyed working there. It was a 12-hour shift, but you got to interact with the people that lived there, and then you got a free breakfast in the morning, so it's pretty cool. You go in about 6 or 7 o'clock, and then you get off at I think 7 or 8 or something. So you got to interact with the residents, and then, you know, you had like the overnight where it was kind of a lull, where it was kind of quiet. And then in the morning, the residents would get up and they'd eat breakfast, and you can interacted with them. So I worked it a couple times. I liked it, but there was only one spot in that whole place that felt sinister to me. And it was these two archways, and they had mirrors that were facing each other. And I'm not kidding. That one spot was it just gave me like just the creepiest feeling. And I was talking to Tony, and I was telling him, you know, because he worked there pretty often. And I was like, do you ever feel creeped out there? He goes, no, not really. I mean, he goes, there have been a few people that have passed there, you know, because it was a retirement home, and they were people that were older. You know, you had people in their 80s, you know, and they were passing away. You know, it happens. And so this one spot, he says, yeah, there was this one spot. And I was like, yeah. And I knew exactly what he was talking about. And I talked to Scorpion. He said the same thing. That one spot is where it just felt like there was like you just felt this weird energy, and there was a restroom right there. So when you were in the north in that north end, because it was a big place, it was a very large facility. When I was in that north end and I'd have to use the restroom, I always felt weird. And sometimes I would feel like there was somebody there. And only one time that anything ever really happened to me, I was in that restroom and I was washing my hands, and I thought somebody came in behind me. And it's like 2 or 3 in the morning. And at that time, there's no one else awake. There might be a maintenance guy there to fix an emergency, this or that. Every once in a while, there were people that would go up there to do things. Or housekeepers. The housekeepers, they would be on one side of the, you know, and that particular night, the housekeepers were on the south end. And so I was up in the north end, and I was just reading a book and relaxing. It was a pretty easy post. And so I used the bathroom, and I was washing my hands, and I saw somebody. I could still remember what he looked like. It was like, he had like dark hair. He had like a blue shirt. He looked like he was dressed, this is going to sound weird, like from the 70s or something. It looked like, you know, how they looked. Like they wore those weird, the buttons with the white buttons, you know, they're snap buttons. And he looked like he was wearing like a blue shirt, and he just kind of walked in right behind me. And I looked up, and I was like, oh, but I didn't hear the stall or anything. And I turned and I looked to my right, and the stall door was open. I looked, there was nobody there. And I was like, whoa, like what, like, what was that? Like, that was weird. And you go right around that corner from there, and there is these two mirrors, and they're facing each other. And that is the only spot in that whole property that I ever felt weird at. And it's not even that far from where I live. I've driven through there. There's deer everywhere. It's real pretty. And I've driven through there a couple times and taken my wife through there and said, yeah, we used to work over here. And the residents were really nice. I've worked at a couple of retirement communities where the residents were cool, and we got along with them, and it was peaceful. But that one, it was just that one spot. And I think that the mirrors had something to do with it. And I think when they face one another, you know, it's even more pronounced. I know I've gotten stories from people who've told me, you know, about stuff, you know, in mirrors that were facing one another. I had a guy that told me he went to a funeral home for a funeral. It's a real short story. And he said he was literally washing his hands in the sink, like, you know, and he said that there was a mirror behind him and a mirror in front of him. And he could see someone standing, like, you know how it shows like it's like you in the mirror, in the mirror, in the mirror, in the mirror. You know what I mean? It just keeps going into infinity. And he said that in one, like the third or fourth image, he could see somebody standing there looking at him, and he was just in shock. And of course, this is a funeral home,
right?
So he goes, I couldn't believe this. I was like looking at this. I believe this was in. I honestly believe this was in Missouri where he said that, but it wasn't where you're at, Lisa. But I believe it was Missouri. It was either, or it might have been Kansas. Anyways, the guy, he told me, he said I was sitting there staring at it, and I was like, there's a man standing there, and he said that he just was like, kind of blinked his eyes and was like, am I seeing that? And then he said it looked like it moved, like it was getting closer to him. And I've heard a story like that before, but it was something else. It wasn't just a man, like an image of a man moving towards somebody. It was something else. It was like hopping. And so when you take those stories, they're really creepy. And I'm probably going to tell the hopping one eventually because it pertains to another subject. But I was just like, that didn't surprise me. And he was like, yeah, and it was at a funeral home. It was already creepy. And he was there for an in-law that had passed away. And he had asked me if I'd ever heard anything like that. And I was like, absolutely. I didn't see anything at that retirement home other than I thought a guy walked in behind me when I was using the bathroom. But then again, it was 2, 3 in the morning and I was really tired and I was trying to stay awake. And because I can't drink coffee, so I have to stay awake and I just have to do the best I can. So, but anyways, continue. I'm sorry to go on a dissertation about mirrors, but you had this situation with these 2 mirrors that were facing each other.
Yeah, and I was told that that's what was creating the vortex, and that what was calling the spirits in. So we ended up doing a cleansing of the house, burning sage and sweetgrass and beating drums, and Kat ended up saying prayers over my house, and we planted crystals in the corners of each of my yard as a cleansing. But I said it kind of stopped it for a while, but it didn't stop it totally. There was one incident where I was sitting in my bedroom and I was sitting at my computer desk and I had my bedroom door closed, and a man it's like something you would see in a movie, like an Abbott and Costello thing, where the man sticks half of his body through the door. This apparition stuck half of his body through his door and was like looking at me. He was wearing like a gray suit with like a red tie. He had short brown hair. He was Caucasian. I don't remember much more than that, but it freaked me out because it's like he just popped through my door, was looking at me for a couple seconds, and then pulled himself back out of my door.
And this was was this like a regular occurrence?
All of these happenings, they would go for a little while and they would kind of slow down. Except for the key incident. The key incident happened all the time. But, they would come in bunches.
Yeah, that's something that's pretty common at our place too. Like stuff would go missing. I was looking high and low for my checkbook, and I sat down on the couch and I looked down and had turned the whole house upside down, and there was my checkbook sitting right in front of me on the coffee table. And I had 2 other people that were tearing up the house trying to find it with me, and we all can attest that there's no way in heck that it was on that coffee table, and we all just overlooked it. That we cleared the coffee table off completely, trying to find this checkbook, and it just wasn't there. I mean, we looked everywhere, and I was like, I could have swore I sat it right here. And I know that it had been moved because I was like, I sat it right here on this coffee table. I mean, it was right there, and I kept saying that. And we looked under the couches, we looked under the coffee table. I had one of those coffee tables that had the top, and then it had like a little thing underneath, like below it, like another second tier where you could put stuff, So I lifted that up and I looked, and I just couldn't figure it out. Then I'm just sitting there, aggravated, and I looked down, and there was my check. It was like 20 years ago, back when checkbooks were a lot more relevant than they are now. But I looked down, and there it was, and I was like, this is impossible, but there it was. And that happens. And so, can I ask you a question, Lisa? Do you think that these hauntings and these things that went on, do you think that this could have been something that, like the portal, as you called it, do you think that could have attracted the attention of a Squatch?
I don't know, but I think it's all intertwined. I think it all somehow fits together as a puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
We just haven't got all the pieces yet. You know,
a lot of people believe like that, but then a lot of people would be like, no, two completely different things. And you know, even though, you know, there's a lot of people who've had have these encounters, and of course Sasquatch just kind of shows up, or Dogman, and they just do not want to believe that could happen. I mean, that they think it's a coincidence or something.
it's like 20 years ago. You know, if you said that you had seen a Sasquatch, well, you were crazy. But now, you know, you see a Sasquatch. It's been proven that they exist. Everybody knows they exist. I mean, you see,
not everyone.
Not everyone. It's not officially proven, but yeah, I get what you're saying. And like you said, if you saw Sasquatch 20 years ago, you were crazy. I personally still believe anybody who's seen a Sasquatch is crazy, but that's just my opinion. I'm messing with you. Folks at home are going like, what? No, folks, Josh Turner's not saying that I think everybody that's seen a Sasquatch is crazy, just all the people that are on TV doing it. No, I'm just joking. I don't want anybody calling me from the History Channel or whatever channel and getting all up in arms. I'm just kidding. I'm just joking. There's a lot of good shows on there on those shows. What I'm saying is, you could literally at one time, you know, be considered a nut for talking about these things. But now I get what you're saying, Lisa. Now it's a lot more accepted. It's like everybody knows they exist. Everybody knows UFOs exist. To deny it is just, there's so many credible people. Heck, Rob Lowe, you know, the actor,
right.
Like he came out and said he saw one. He was working on, if you look it up, guys, go look it up. I don't know exactly. My wife showed me the article and I read it. And I was like, guess he's crazy now. I just started ignoring him. But I'm just kidding. And now he came out and said it. Like he was on a set or something, and they were going through the woods, and they saw one right down the side of the road. It was like on a gravel road or something. I mean, you know, you got Rob Lowe.
Right.
I was just watching him the other day on Parks and Recreation. So I mean, you know, and this guy has seen a Sasquatch. I know a lot of people who've seen a Sasquatch. You could probably walk around your local grocery store. And I actually thought about that as an idea. I was like, you know, I told Anthony, I said, we ought to walk around Sprouts or H-E-B, one of these grocery stores, and just go up to 20, 25 people and ask them if they believe in Sasquatch, and ask them if they've seen a Sasquatch, and then just get like a poll, you know, or a ghost,
Right.
and just see how many people have seen a UFO, a ghost, Sasquatch. Now, a lot less acceptable is what I've seen. I saw what is called a dogman, which I think is a silly term. It looked like a werewolf to me, but whatever. But everybody, you know, when I made a post about that years ago on Facebook, just to see what kind of reaction I would get. This is like 2010 or something. I posted it, and a bunch of people laughed. But other people were like, really? And they started asking me questions about it. Now, this is long before I ever got into the, you know, community itself and started doing shows and talking to people and about it in the community, you know, other than like, you know, interviewing people here and there that I had met, you know, over the years who'd seen one. And hadn't been on anybody's program at that time, but I posted it just to see what people would say. And I had people that laughed at me. And what's funny is one of the guys from my hometown that made fun of me, turns out his brother had seen one. And, you know, and he was absolutely going to be a douchebag to his brother. Like his own brother came forward and said, I've seen what you've seen. He's never to this day given me the details of it, and I've tried, but I don't know if he just doesn't want to talk about it, or it seems like he's got an excuse or whatever. But anyway, he saw one at this area near the pond, you know, in our hometown, and near a hike and bike. And I know of two other people who've seen something there in that area. And so I asked him, I've asked him repeatedly, and he's always like, I'll get back to you. He never does. Maybe he just doesn't want to talk about it. But I just kind of left it alone. But that his brother thought it was just a big joke. And he's like, oh, you sound like my brother just saying that stuff. And I'm like, well, why do you think there's a lot of people who've actually come out and said that? Because they've seen something. I mean, but it's a lot more accepted now. You know, like you said, people, it's not been 100% proven, but yeah, it's so common. Everybody has seen or heard of something weird, and it's a lot more accepted to have been able to come forward and say you've seen a ghost or a Sasquatch. But there is still a slight stigma attached to these things, and so when you come out and you say you've seen this, you're kind of like, you know. I mean, I don't know. It's weird because there was a guy where my dad worked at, and he was in Washington, literally in your state. I don't know exactly where, but my dad worked with him when he was in his 20s, and he said that guy swore up and down that he shot and killed a Sasquatch. Like, he swore up and down. So, of course, my dad, said that everybody that was there was just kind of like, nah, they didn't really believe him, but it was weird. It was more like the people that were there to work. They weren't all from there. They weren't from,
right.
Yeah. And I think it was near Olympia where it happened. And, but
that's close to where I was.
Well, the locals around there though, totally believe. I mean, yeah. When I was up in that area, I mean, they were hawking Bigfoot t-shirts and everything else. And they were just like, hey, welcome to Seattle or whatever when I was up there. And they had the Sasquatch shirts, everywhere. It's just it's a very common thing. And every time I'm up there in Washington, I'm looking through the wood line, see if I see something. I'm like, oh, look, that's a tree stump. Never mind. But haven't seen a Sasquatch yet. But I mean, I'm hoping, keeping hope alive that maybe one of these days I'll see one. I don't want to see it up close. The Mount Rainier area. I don't want to see it up close like I did the Dogman. I'd rather see it from a distance and say, okay.
I want to see the Dogman. That's the only thing I haven't seen.
She's crazy, please.
That's the only thing I haven't seen. I've seen the UFO. I told you about my UFO. Dogman, I really, really believe they exist. And I've been invited to go to LBL to do research, but Waltz, and his little challenge that he has going on has kind of scared the out of me. So
that's in Mississippi though. Waltz
I know, but the way he describes what goes on with them, it's made me change my mind. I don't want to go searching them out, but I really do want to see one.
I wouldn't want to go see one.
Lisa is in Mississippi now.
No, I'm in Missouri.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
She's in the state where the guy saw the dead guy in the mirror.
Huh?
I said you're in the state where you saw the dead guy in the mirror, where the guy saw them in the funeral home. Because I believe that was in Missouri, where I can go back and look, but I'm trying to find the message right now, where the guy saw the thing in the mirror. It was a guy in the mirror. Yeah, that happened, I believe, in Missouri.
Really?
I think it was Kansas City, Missouri, where he saw it. Kansas City.
Well, St. Louis, Missouri, is known for having the Exorcist house.
Yeah, do you don't want to go run around in there, do you? You're not trying.
No, I don't want to go run around there. I'm done. My last experience with this actually happened when I was here in my little apartment building. I would leave my apartment, and there's a guy that lives next door to me, and something kept telling me to always go knock on his door, and I kept ignoring it, and I ignored it, and finally one day I couldn't ignore it anymore. So I went and I knocked on his door, and I kept knocking and nobody'd answer. I started back to my apartment, and something just said, no, go knock on his door. So I went and I was knocking on his door again, and nobody answered. So I went downstairs to talk to Steve in our leasing office. And I said, I knew the guy was passed away. But I wasn't going to go down there and say, hey, Steve, this guy's dead, So I went down and I said, Steve, does anybody check on my neighbor next door? I noticed that his mail is piling up. And Steve goes, well, if he takes off with his family, sometimes, and he'll be gone for a week or so. He goes, but I'll call and I'll check up on him. I said, okay, thanks. So about 15 minutes later, I'm taking the garbage out. And Steve's there at the guy's apartment, and with 2 police officers, and they found him deceased. So that happened there. I kept having something that kept telling me kitchen. And like when I would be in my kitchen, I would feel really strange. And one day, his family was here, and they were checking out the apartment and stuff that they have to move out. And I had talked to them, and I told them that I was the one that, let Steve know that I thought something was up. And I said, I keep hearing this word, kitchen. I said, did he die in the kitchen? And so the lady I was talking to walked over by the door and pointed down at the floor, which was in the kitchen, and said he died right there. I'm like, oh no.
So that's pretty freaky.
That happened about a month and a half ago.
So let me ask you this, Karla. Now you had spiritual encounters that didn't begin until 2006.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so your mom passed away in 2006. And do you feel like the hauntings were her?
Yes.
Okay.
But they were comforting. They were loving touches. It wasn't too long after my mother passed away that my half sister on my mom's side, she passed away also. And she was nasty. She was nasty to me my whole life. That's a whole nother show.
Well, do you want to explain? Because that's interesting. Because that part we talked about, the sister part a little bit. We touched base. It's interesting. She was 20 years older than you.
Yeah.
Right. And so when what you had told me, I remember the other night you told me when you were born, she was jealous.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much. And then she already had a child that was 10 months old, right?
Right.
Yeah. And so then when you were born, the resentment set in. And so she was very ugly to you. And
not so much when I was really little, but I think she still resented me because Mom had her own child instead of being the grandmother that my sister wanted, took away from her kids. She had 5 kids. And yeah, I think she resented me, but she got really, really nasty when I had my kids. Yeah, she did horrible things to me. And I believe she was here also. And one of the things that I think she was doing was, the hood over your stove with the fan and the lights?
mm-hmm.
It would go on by itself. And I have many, many witnesses to this. It would turn on high, and the light would blink. And then the light never blinks when it's on. And if you went up to it and tried to turn it off, you could not turn it off. It would be on high, and the light would blink until it was ready to turn off. And this happened a lot. And I had a best friend who was a skeptic, and I didn't tell her about it at first. But I finally broke down and was telling her about it, and I was on the phone, and I was actually stirring something on the stove while I was telling her this. And she goes, Karla, I think it's probably your sister. And right when she said that, it happened. And I was inches from my face. And I said, oh my God, it's happening right now. And yeah, that happened so much. And so many people saw it. But when my renters would come and rent, it wouldn't happen for them. after I moved out of the house. Because I went back to Forks after 4.5 years of living in my mom's house. And I'm here right now. I'm renting to my oldest son, Taylor, and his girlfriend, Angie. And
that's crazy. So let me get this straight. You think that the hauntings that were affecting you were literally your mother and your older half sister?
Yes.
Wow. And
some of them were nasty, and some of them were very comforting.
And so the good ones were your mom, and the bad ones were kind of your
That's what I believe.
Yeah.
You know, there's no proof, but that's how I feel.
Yeah. When I was a kid, my sister told me, if I die before you, I'm going to haunt you. I'm like, you better not. You're going to wish you hadn't. I don't even know why I knew that I would still be able to, like, you know, defeat her in the spirit world, but I just kind of felt like it, you know? I just...
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I just told her, I was like, you better not. And she could, it was weird because at that time she could beat me up because I was little, you know, and she was about 5 years older than me.
Yeah.
And they would beat me up. But once I got older and bigger, you know, I was like, no, well. And I told them, I was like, if I die before you guys, I'm definitely going to come back and haunt you, but it'll be in a good way. It'll just be, I'll just come back and inappropriate times, make farting noises, and you know, when you're trying to get a job or something, you know, just throw coffee across the table at the guy interviewing you, you know, playful stuff like that, just fun stuff. Pull people's hair when you're standing behind them, and then they turn around and they see you, and stuff like that, you know. make like you're walking out of the store and like something falls out of your purse that you didn't put in there, and they're like, ma'am, you're shoplifting again. And we told you. You know, just playful stuff, you know, fun stuff.
Right.
No, that's not good, though. I think that's horrible that you had to go through that you had a sister that was so vindictive that she would even strike at you from the grave. And that is not uncommon either. I've heard stories of things like that. Oh, man, I'm telling you.
That's nice to know because that's really the way I've been feeling about it.
Well, you're not crazy. Let me tell you a real quick one here. I had a guy who sent me a story, and I was actually going to give him to come on the live stream and tell. He had a deed, inherited a piece of property he didn't even know that, and he had this half brother. He had a half brother that was about, I think he was 10 or 12 years older than him. I got to go back and look, but long story short, that older half brother knew about that property had been left to him. And he was trying to forge his signature, doing all these things. And then somebody came forward and told him, said, hey, can you take a look at this? And it was him. And he goes, I didn't sign that. That's not, what is that? You know, and he had a brother, and his brother, he had a weird name too. Like his brother's name was like Ford or something. It was weird. It was like his first name. It was weird. Anyway, this guy Ford had like done all this underhanded stuff, and when he went to confront the guy, you know, started like screaming and yelling at him and literally spit like chewing tobacco on him and told him, you know, he goes, when I die, I curse you. You know, I'm gonna come do this and that. You know, about 2 or 3 years later, the guy dies, and he said almost instantaneously, weird things started happening. Like the garage window, when him and his wife were pulling up to their house, it broke out. They found a handprint like on the microwave, and it looked like something had been stuck in there and it had melted while they were gone on vacation. And just a lot of like weird stuff. And he said that this guy was obviously, you know, he barely knew this guy. This guy was a half sibling. And I guess his mother or whatever had remarried and had, you know, kids with, you know, and that was her son from another marriage. And that son felt jilted, you know, I guess, or whatever. And so they believe that the haunting that was going on, I was trying to get them to come on the show, but he's like, nah, and there was stuff that he wanted that he couldn't, or that he didn't want to talk about because it was family stuff, you know, but you know, he got in touch with his half-sister who said, yeah, Ford was a very, very evil and bad guy and was not a nice person. And So,
well, my other half sister was nice to everybody, and everybody loved her, but she was not nice to me, and she was not nice to her own mother, my mother, towards the end. She did really nasty things. So,
well, and it's hard to explain why people do that. That there are people that are like that too. You talk to one person and they're like, oh, they're a saint. Oh, they're the absolute salt of the earth. And you talk to another person and they're like, no, they're evil.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
And I'll give you a prime example of that. My great uncle. Okay. He was super nice to me, when I was growing up. He was very, very ugly to his son and to my dad. My dad would stay with him, and he would basically, any little thing would set him off. He'd whoop him, for anything. But he treated me and his grandson, the oldest grandson in particular, was his favorite, and he treated us great. Like I loved going out and going out into the pasture with him, and and it would be me, him, my grandpa, and he treated me almost like he was a second grandfather. But he was mean as a snake to my dad and to his own son. And nobody can understand that. And that's weird because me and my dad are kind of the same way. Like my dad, not nice to me. We have an awful relationship. I mean, we're just not, I don't hate him. I can't take him other than small doses. I just can't deal with him. And my grandfather is known as being a very kind guy. He used to get in a lot of fights and stuff like that. He was kind of wild, but everybody always talked very highly of him, and for whatever reason, him and my dad just hated each other. But my grandfather was also very mean to my dad, and I saw it at times. I saw him be belittling and just kind of just really ugly, and he was always nice to me. I can't complain. He was never mean to me, but he had a problem with my dad, and now in turn, my dad has a problem with me. We have no similar interests at all. I mean, nothing. We are nothing alike at all. I mean, we look very similar, but other than that, I know he's my dad, but other than that, we don't jive at all. And I don't understand that. I don't know where that comes from. I don't know why family is the way that they are. I'm not here to be a therapist and try to break it down or whatever, but I do believe that when it comes to spirituality and the spirit world, it's hard to gauge, I mean, there are people who say that a spirit is enlightened to a certain point when they pass over and they let go of some things and they change. And then other people say, nope, they're the same as they were when they were alive.
Yeah.
I mean, in your case, it sounds like she was, not a good person.
Well, I didn't know that my sister was jealous of me until the last decade of her life. And my mom came out and told me, she goes, Karla, your sister has been bad-mouthing you the whole, for a long, long time. And all you do is give love and you're there for everything. And your sister can't handle any of my accomplishments. Just bad-mouths me to, I guess, anybody that would listen. She did it to our own mother. And my mom had just had enough, and she broke down and she was crying and telling me all this stuff. And then I looked back and went, wow, a lot of stuff is starting to make sense, And yeah, it was like a family war. But I think we should talk about the reason why we're even on your show, about my son's Bigfoot encounter recently.
Oh, I thought we were here to talk about insurance premiums, but go ahead. I was like, oh, okay. All right. So, you're on your show to talk about your experiences just in general, spiritual, right, Bigfoot, right, whatever.
And there was a lot of other things that happened, but it's just too involved, But I hit some of the highlights.
Yeah, nothing too dramatic, anything terrifying?
No, nothing terrifying.
Okay, because we definitely would like you to relive it for the audience if you're able to. So you now let's get into your Bigfoot. Like you just said, you have some Bigfoot activity. Now, do you want to start from the beginning and then just move forward from there?
Yeah. Well, the very first thing that happened was my husband. Well, I always watch all the Bigfoot shows and stuff, and sometimes he hears them, and he was out smoking a cigarette on the front porch, and he came in and said, "You're not going to believe this, but I think I just heard a Bigfoot call. It sounds just like they sound on TV." And I'm going, "Wow, that's awesome." And then it happened one other time. So it was 2 times he heard the calls. And that was at least 5 years ago. And then my younger son, who's living with us in Forks, Washington, where I live, I'm in Port Angeles, Washington, at the house that I own with Taylor and Angie. And I love her so much. I hope she's my future daughter-in-law. And so with Araya, I just love my son's girlfriends. But my younger son, Duncan, and his girlfriend, Araya, and their son, Nija, has been living with us since March. And we're really close to Quileute River. And they would take this trail down to the river, and they go fishing all the time. And not too long after they'd been starting to go down there fishing, Araya came back and said, "I saw this weird, huge creature crossing from the other side of the river, just a little bit down from them." And she goes, "It had glowing eyes, and it was enormous." And she says, I thought it was a walrus." And I said, "Well, it's not a walrus." I said, "It's probably a Bigfoot, because I know they're around our area. Because I heard a scream as well, and my other daughter-in-law to be, I hope, her and I were sitting in the living room, and there was these military jets that would go over our house, and it was so loud. I mean, super loud. And during one of these times when it was going over, we heard this scream, and it was very loud. You could tell it was in the distance, but you could hear it over the jet. And if there had been a neighbor outside screaming like that, we wouldn't have heard it. But it lasted a long time, and I just knew it was a Bigfoot screaming at the jet. She looks at me, and I look at her. We both said, "Did you hear that?" So that was one of the early things that happened. And then when my son, Duncan, and Araya started fishing at the river, they would take this trail. She came back and told me about this creature with the glowing eyes. There was no light shining on this thing. It was glowing from within. So she got a Bigfoot problem down there. And then they were hearing boulders being thrown in the water. And they heard branches breaking as something was walking on the other side of the river. And every time they'd come home, I'd say, "Anything happened tonight?" And more often than not, something happened. And let me see, I've got notes here. Let me see, I'm just going to go by memory. Then after her seeing that and hearing boulders thrown, we were talking about it. I said, "Rhea, have you ever found anything crossing your trail, blocking your trail that you take down there?" Her eyes got really big, and she goes, "Yes." There was 3 pieces of a tree that was blocking the trail. And this tree, I actually went down there in the daytime. I was nervous the whole time. And this tree had been broken into 3 pieces. It was a healthy tree. It was not rotten. And it had been placed right in the trail lengthwise. And the other ones were kind of crossways. but it would have taken 2 or 3 people to actually lift that and pack it and put it in the trail. And so I said, wow, that is a definite Bigfoot sign. And he's trying to tell you something. They don't like you fishing down there. And then they were down there, and they hear these branches breaking and stuff, every once in a while when they're down there. And one time she said, it didn't sound like branches breaking. It sounded like a tree broke. And when they went to leave the fishing site, their flashlight went out. So they couldn't take the trail back home. They had no light. So they took the road, which isn't lit, but you can still see. So they were taking the road back home. And my son knows that area really well, but she'd never been on that road. And they come upon this great big huge thing that was just standing there while I'm standing. She thought, well, maybe it's a stump. Maybe it's a stump. But my son knew it wasn't a stump because he's familiar with the area. He says, let's go, let's go, let's go. And she's going, what's that? What's that? They come in the door, and I could see on their faces, and I go, okay, what happened? And she told me what they saw, and she said, it could be a stump, right? It could be a stump, right? So I got in my car. We got in my car, and we drove over there, and there was nothing there. I shone my headlights all over the area where it was seen, and it was 15 feet from them. It was close, but it was not there when I went back with the car and the flashlights. There was nothing there. And so then the kids were given a big tent, and they put it up on the property where they fish at, their friends. They gave them this tent, really nice. And I didn't want them camping out with my grandson, so I said, nope, he's staying with me tonight. He's sleeping in my bed. And nothing, I haven't heard too much, since they've been camping there, but I haven't seen them much either. But I am totally convinced that that was Bigfoot, and he's been trying to tell them to back off. And so that's why I reached out to Lisa and said, man, I'm scared. I'm really scared. They're camping out there all night. I need help. I don't know what to do. So that's how Lisa got a hold of you, Josh. And that's when we had this 3 hours and 39 minutes on the phone, three of us, talking about all this stuff. And yeah, I'm still scared.
Angie.
What?
Tell them about Angie.
Oh, my other future daughter-in-law, whose house I'm staying at right now. I'm not at home. This is in the house I own in Port Angeles, but I come in and stay with them at least once a month so I can go grocery shopping at Costco, She was coming home from work. This was like 5 years ago. And she was walking down the road, coming home. I don't know for sure whether it was total daylight or what, but something big, really big, she said, was following her in the woods. Well, she got to the house, and she didn't say a word about it. I don't know why, but I said, why did you walk home? I would have come and picked you up. She said, well, the lady at the store was kind of nasty, and I didn't want to ask her again. This was right before she got her $1,000 phone. And so I said, Sasquatch is out there in those woods. He can get you. I was kind of joking, Wasn't very serious about it. Just said it out of the blue. And because we'd heard noises before and stuff, her eyes got huge when I said that. Her eyes were like saucers. And I said, what? What? And she said, yeah, something huge was following her the last block or two. There's not blocks, but that's just a measurement I'll use. And it would speed up. When she sped up, it would slow down. When she slowed down, she crossed the road and just ran until the turnoff that goes down to our house. And yeah, she's here somewhere. She could verify all this. My other son is here. He could verify that about the ghost stuff and the fact that he saw these logs in the trail after my other son was fishing and stuff was happening. He goes, yeah, I saw those logs, especially the one big one, laying right in the trail. And he goes, I really wondered how that got there. I was going to have him verify it, but I guess it's no big deal.
Well, I mean, yeah, I guess if you can't have them come on and verify it, it didn't happen. So anyway, go ahead.
Yeah.
You heard it, folks. This has all just been a big bunch of crap. She can't get anybody to verify this stuff. So wasting your time, folks. Sorry. Great.
I'm going to get him in here.
But no, so we'll ask Lisa. Lisa, is your sister prone to making up stories about Bigfoot?
No.
No. Okay. Well, then there you go.
Not at all.
I believe you, and that's all that matters.
I told you about some family problems we were having with my other sister. My husband actually wrote a letter to someone in my family saying that I do not lie and that I can't stand being lied to or about. Yeah, it's like a 2-page letter saying that, yeah, my wife has never lied to me. I've never caught her in even a little white lie. So there you go.
Well, we don't have that letter, though, to verify these things either. So
yeah, and I can't say for sure that I've never told him a white lie.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. You forget something at the grocery store. You got salt, pepper. Where are the eggs? Funny thing is, they quit making them. They just said that they don't sell eggs anymore at the supermarket. They just said, you know what, we're done with eggs. Apparently 1,000 people died of salmonella yesterday. It's a whole crazy thing. Anyway, what are we watching? That's what I do to my wife. I just obfuscate everything. Just make her laugh. When I make her laugh, and then she'll leave me alone. She'll just be like, "Oh, okay," yeah. And then later on she'll remember. And then you just pretend like you don't know what you're talking about. So the Sasquatch incidents. Your son goes fishing, right?
Right.
And he has this encounter with, he sees this creature.
Mm-hmm. Him and his girlfriend both.
Yeah. And
15 feet from them. And
then he said he's not going to stop going over there, though.
That's right.
He's determined to go back, and he's going to.
Exactly. He does not care. He wants the damn fish. Mm-hmm. He doesn't care what it takes to get it. Bigfoot is not going to scare him off, but I'm the one that's scared. I just am.
That's your baby, and you're worried that Sasquatch is going to.
Well, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And my grandson's down there a lot, but they're not taking him at night anymore.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
At least you don't.
Because all this activity happens at night. We don't know what time of day the logs, but there was one big one. We don't know when that was placed there, but they saw it in the daylight.
They're very nocturnal. They're very nocturnal creatures. That's why. I mean,
right.
It's. I tell people all the time. They said, "Well, when's the best time to go?" And I try not to tell people because I don't want them going out. But if you're going to have an encounter, most of the time it's going to be at night. I mean, these things are nocturnal. I mean, there's a reason for that. There's less people out roaming around, making noise, and doing all the things they do. And and of course, these things I think they hunt at night.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, like,
one other thing I could tell you about. It's okay on the other side of the river while they were fishing. All these elk just come bolting out of the other side where it's all forest. They come bolting out, and they're running for their lives. They jump in the river. They're swimming for their lives, and they split up the herd. One was a little further downriver. One was a group further upriver. And then they heard the baby calves being killed that was left behind.
No.
Almost forgot to tell you that.
Yeah, and you believe that that was Sasquatch?
Oh, I definitely do. Yeah.
Yeah.
My son is kind of in denial. You know, he doesn't want to talk about it. He just doesn't want to think about it. But he knows. He saw it. How can you deny that? It couldn't have been anything else.
Okay, folks, so that's all the time we had for tonight. We're going to be back next week, and we'll go with part 2. We'll be talking to these sisters from Washington. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and good night.